This is one of the most painful and confusing experiences someone can go through after dating an avoidant. You think you were still in a relationship, and then suddenly you see them with someone new, posting, smiling, dating, acting like nothing happened. And the first thought that hits you is, they cheated. On the surface, that makes complete sense, because from your perspective, there was never a real ending. No conversation, no closure, no clear breakup, just distance, silence, and confusion. But with avoidance, what often happens is very different from what it looks like. Avoidants don't usually end relationships the way most people expect. They don't always sit you down and say, "I'm done." Instead, many of them emotionally check out long before the relationship officially ends. And they do it quietly, internally, and without announcing it. They sort of lie fade away. From the outside, you still think you're together. From the inside, they've already left. They just didn't tell you. You start to feel as if you didn't matter. This often starts after emotional tension, conflict, or a disagreement. Maybe you asked for clarity. Maybe you needed reassurance. Maybe you brought up something that made them uncomfortable or emotionally overwhelmed. And suddenly, they pulled back. Their texts slowed. Their calls stopped. They became distant. They said they needed space, or worse, they said nothing at all. You're left trying to understand what just happened. So you text again and again. You try to fix it. You try to get clarity. You ask, "Are we okay?" You ask, "Where do we stand?" You ask, "Did I do something wrong?" And they don't respond. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and there's still no clear ending. Meanwhile, you're holding on, because no one ever told you it was over. That's where the heartbreak really lives. Avoidants are capable of ending a relationship internally without ending it externally. Once their nervous system feels overwhelmed, pressured, or emotionally flooded, their brain shifts into shutdown mode. And in that state, distance feels like relief. So they detach. They compartmentalize. They convince themselves it's over, even if they never say it out loud. To them, the relationship ended when the emotional stress became too much. To you, the relationship never officially ended at all. That's why months later, you can open social media and feel blindsided. There they are, dating someone new, looking happy, living their life. And you're left thinking, how could they move on so fast? How could they do this while I was still waiting? Here's the hard truth most people don't want to hear. They didn't move on quickly. They moved on quietly, long before you knew the relationship was over, and they did not tell you. That's what happened. Avoidants often don't process endings with communication. They process endings with withdrawal. When they stop talking to you, stop engaging, stop responding, that is the breakup in their nervous system, even if it was never communicated. That doesn't make it fair. It doesn't make it healthy. And it absolutely doesn't mean it didn't hurt you. But it explains why it feels like betrayal when, in their mind, they had already emotionally left. This is also why avoidance can appear completely unaffected when you're still in pain. They already went through the emotional detachment phase alone, without you. You're grieving the loss after it happened. They disconnected before it ended. So when you see them dating someone else, it feels like cheating, because from your timeline it is. From their timeline, the relationship ended months ago. That mismatch in timelines is what creates so much trauma for people who date avoidants. And here's the part that matters most. Just because an avoidant didn't technically cheat, doesn't mean what they did wasn't damaging. Ghosting someone, pulling back without explanation, leaving you emotionally suspended. allowing you to believe you're still in a relationship while they've already checked out. That causes real psychological harm. It's the fact that they sort of allowed you to think what you wanted to think because they avoided communicating with you. When this happens, it creates self-doubt. It creates abandonment wounds. It makes you question your worth. It keeps you stuck, waiting, hoping, replaying. So no, this isn't about defending avoidance. It's about understanding the pattern so you stop blaming yourself. You weren't stupid. You weren't naive. You weren't too much. You were operating under the assumption that relationships end with communication. They were operating from a nervous system that ends relationships through disappearance. And those two worlds collide in devastating ways. If you're holding on to confusion after an avoidant breakup, the most important thing to understand is this. Silence was their ending, even though you deserved words. And you are allowed to grieve that. You are allowed to be angry about that. And you are allowed to move forward without waiting for closure they may never give. Because healing doesn't come from understanding their silence. It comes from choosing not to stay stuck in it.